I would say that having privilege is starting out ahead of everyone else. Like, if two people were running a race and one person's already 5 steps ahead when you start, that's kind of how I think of it, really.
If I need something, I'll get it, or sometimes if I want something, I'll get it, which I think is privilege.
Better than average. So, like, for example, like, if somebody comes from like somebody's father and mother are successful people and they're born into that family, that's privilege.
Well, I think of privilege as
in 137 years.
Well, before I say what I think privilege is, I think every person has needs certain fundamental things in order to live their life to be, like I'd say, above the poverty standard, meaning like enough money to buy food, house, have an adequate education, and etc. But privilege would be the things you do on top of that that kind of separate you from the people under the threshold.
I go to a really good school. I'm able to do a lot of things that people in the lower socioeconomic standing can't do. I was able to choose where to go to college.
I consider privilege to be somebody who isn't treated any differently because of where they come from or their skin color or anything else about them.
I think privilege is the benefit of the doubt.
What do you consider to be privilege?
Being white.
Why do you think that?
Because white people have an inherent benefit in a capitalist economy, especially this one in America where there's institutional racism, and they are able to succeed and have privileges in many ways that people of color don't receive the same opportunities.
Yes, because if they have privilege, then they have easier access to the means of capitalism.
Because if you're born into a wealthy family and you're white, you're not treated any differently.
Well, they certainly have more motivation, and they have maybe in the first steps of whatever their plan are, they might have more connections and more support behind them. However, I feel after a certain point, regardless of whether or not you're privileged or underprivileged, if you've gotten yourself to a certain point, you can actually decide your path without needing the framework behind it. But in order to get to...
I think that it definitely has advantages, but it depends on the individual and if they take advantage of the opportunities and resources that they're given, and if they don't, then no, and if they do, then yes.
Depends on how hard they're willing to work, you know, like that there's many people that come from nothing that make something just because they have the same drive and confidence as the people that are successful and come from privilege.
Yes, because there's more opportunity and more freedom within their own community.
They simply are given benefits that people of color aren't. They're, allowed to do things without people like looking at them weirdly, and they have inherent benefits also. Many of them aren't born into poverty, such as people of color. They aren't asked if they're illegal every single time. Other things like that. They aren't looked at with suspicion by police, by authorities constantly.
In a medical facility with elderly people most of whom did not have a lot of socioeconomic security, and they were not educated in terms of how to feed themselves properly, what foods are nutritious and what foods are just junk food. A lot of them ended up with illnesses that could have been prevented had they been more well educated and had money to buy fruits and vegetables, which are more expensive.
Wait, capitalism is when you share it, right?
No, that's socialism.